excited to introduce our keynote speaker of this evening. We would like to introduce you to the 50-year-old millennial and today's keynote speaker, Mark Pettipaw. Mark says that whether you are an entrepreneur or CEO or making the transition from team member to manager or moving up the ranks to the senior management team, you need to motivate your employees, build your company's culture, and lead your teams to new heights. Mark is the CEO of the Mark Pettipaw Group. He's here today to share with you, with all of us, how to scale the human side of your business. Mark's mission is to help you become an effective leader and build great teams that build momentum for your organization. Mark is passionate about the skills needed to develop your team in order to empower them to take good care of your customer. He believes a good opportunity exists for leaders to take ownership in improving mental health in our country by better serving their people to have more successful careers and hence healthier lives. Prior to starting his own business in June of 2020, Mark was president of Dunshire Developments. He was responsible for achieving their strategic operating goals, including all aspects of land acquisitions, development, home building operations, customer care, sales, marketing, and most importantly, leadership. Mark ensured the overall creation and adherences to all project timelines, overall quality of craftsmanship, health and safety of all persons, and customer satisfaction, as well as the growth of the Dunshire team into a new era based on a strategic plan anchored in servant leadership philosophies. Looking back, Mark started his career in retail in over a 20-year span. He excelled in leadership roles with companies such as TELUS Mobility, Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, The Printing House, and Fusion Homes. Mark lives by a philosophy and set of practices that enriches the lives of individuals, builds better organizations, and ultimately creates a just more caring world. He has presented to MBA classes at both Ryerson and the University of Guelph. And he's also been a keynote speaker for many well-known organizations, including the Guelph Chamber of Commerce and Metroland Media. Mark is committed to teaching practical leadership skills that you can begin applying to your business immediately. So I'm super excited to hear from Mark. Mark, welcome.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for that kind, warm introduction. I appreciate that. Maybe just a couple quick plugs before I start in. I'm going to try and share in 10 minutes the high level of an 8-hour training or a extremely valuable book on Amazon. I just moved to Wasaga, just as a side note. We've been coming up here for 3 or 4 summers because my in-laws have been here. And since I started my own consulting business, I can be anywhere because my customers are all over North America. So where home is didn't matter. And my wife and kids and I moved up here. We've been here for 3 months and I just love this town. I am honestly in love with Wasaga Beach. I think it's the water because I'm a maritimer originally. But I just love being here and I love everything about it. And I plan to contribute and help the community in any way I can. When I'm done my board duties at Chamber in Guelph. So as much as I can get involved in the community and help, I'm glad to. So that's a little bit about me on top of the intro. And again, thanks for that, Michelle. So why did I write the book and why do I want to share that in 10 minutes or less? I was blessed with, sorry, next slide, Sarah. Sorry about that. We'll keep moving right through it. And we can move one more, actually. So I was blessed with these 2 people here. And I still have a hard time doing this without crying, so bear with me. It's my mom and dad. My dad was a military guy, served for 25 years, and then his private life was at Pratt & Whitney, Canada, when he was done serving. My mom is the life of the party maritimer woman. She made sure there was a smile on everybody's face before she'd sit down, before she'd take a break. She raised 5 boys. I'm the youngest of 5. Those type of people have a dramatic impact on your life. And as I went through and looked back in business, I realized that I grew up with servant leadership. I grew up with strategy and execution. And my dad was the strategy guy. Let's get everything done. It needs to be done on time and keep everybody in order and be punctual. And mom was the hold on, is everybody smiling? Is everyone taken care of? Are they all set up for success? And that's what brought her joy and happiness. And I didn't realize it until I was 20 years into my business career, looking up to the Simon Sineks of the world and the John Maxwells, that I had Mary and Wayne Pettipaw. And so it was one of the big motivators for me to write the book. And then I was lucky to work for great leaders that allowed me to see little pieces of process that they did naturally that I could put into an actual process and start to share with other people. You know, I had a gentleman by the name of Bob Hunter at Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, and Richard Petty, who was the CEO, and Jackie Fu at Bell. And all these great leaders taught me individual processes on the way they led. And I've been able to say, okay, servant leadership has this knock of being soft and huggy, if you've heard about it, but it's extremely measurable and it's very repeatable. The only thing is you have to actually care about your people. And if you care about your people and you care about closing their learning gaps and celebrating their wins, as you grow your people, how's that not good for your business? And so I was able to learn that from those individuals. And I'll give you a little more specifics in a couple slides of what those things are. I wanted to leave a process for anyone who was willing to follow. I wanted people to learn from tough times. You know, I lost my brother and my dad in the same year. I lost my job. I was the president of Dunsire, and I said when the pandemic started, if we lose one employee, we start with me. Well, the owner gave me my wish the next day, and off I went into the entrepreneurial world to chase what I've always wanted to do. And I really believe we can grow business by growing people's skills and ultimately improving mental health in our country. Because when you think about it, we spend half our time at work. And if you work for a company that doesn't have the right values, or you have a miserable boss, how do you go home at night? You don't go home in a good space. And so if we can improve people's performance while improving their satisfaction at work, growing the bottom line, we can actually impact mental health positively. So next slide, Sarah. Why servant leadership? It's good for employee development. So if you as a leader hold yourself accountable to putting a process in place that identifies gaps, hold people accountable to result, but you own closing that gap and giving them the knowledge to succeed and the resources, every individual gets better. And if you have a small organization, it's just you and one or two employees, think of the impact. If you have a larger organization and your CEO believes in this and your senior executives do, and it cascades to your directors and your managers, think about everybody getting better following these processes at what they do, what that will mean for your business. It's also great for your customer, because if you have an engaged employee who cares about what they do because they feel they're cared for, that's going to show up for your customer every day. And again, I really think we can change the world through mental health protection, and that starts with servant leadership. The problem with servant leadership is there's a lot of great speakers out there, but no one tells you how to do it. No one says, like, here's a process. And I was just lucky to work for some great people that I've put one together. And I'm going to share that here in a slide or two. Sarah, next slide. So in my book and in my servant leadership training, and I do strategic planning, execution, and facilitation and sales training, all that stuff that I've learned in those great organizations. But for me, it all starts with leadership, because if you can't get people to develop, you don't stand a chance with your strategic plan, no matter how good it is, because people won't execute it. You won't do well in sales because they don't have the behaviors and the skills, because they don't trust you to see success in the sales department. So it all starts with leadership. So in this book, which is a very easy read on Amazon, I wrote it saying, you got to be able to pick it up and put it down and be done. And so it's like an hour and 37-minute read. It's easy. It's the type of book that even I could read, is the way I push it. It's a manual and a manifesto. So in this book, there's 5 anchors that I speak to, and I'll spend the next 3 or 4 minutes and then close up here on this slide. Number 1 is, you know, when you talk about key performance indicators, and a lot of organizations, you know their metrics and they coach on the number, it's not what changes the result. Behaviors change the result. So you have to put in processes that are repeatable to change behaviors by developing people. Now, before you can even do that, you got to be able to connect. We're humans. We won't take feedback from people we don't trust. Even if we have to, because they're our boss, we'll only give them the minimal. But if someone can connect with us and understand us, we're more open and willing to learn their feedback. So I teach in the training and in this book a connection meeting, and that's simply what I call opening the emotional bank account. How do you put deposits in the account before you got to take out a withdrawal that's some negative feedback? How do you find out how the person likes to be led through past experiences? And I go into a lot of details that I can't today in 10 minutes, but specifically the behaviors you as a leader can ask your team member to get them to open up, to find out how they want to be led so they can succeed. And then weekly one-on-ones, again, how do you coach someone on a regular basis? Some organizations can't do them every week, they do them every month. But again, those look like, hey, let's talk about last week's results. Here's where you did well. Why do you think you were so successful? Hey, that one's struggling a little bit. What do you think the gap is? And so what you're doing is you're getting the employee to self-identify where they need help. Now, your job as the servant leader is to ask those questions and impart your knowledge and the resources that they don't have. Once people can adapt the behavior and own it, that's where they repeat that behavior. And then I do a third piece called Coaching During the Game. There's a gentleman by the name of Tom Peters in the 80s, wrote a book about management by wandering around. I've modernized it to call it Coaching During the Game. I do another chapter on professional development strategies. How do you develop next in lines? How do you give them learning opportunities before the promotion exists? And it's not always about promotion, it's about skill gaps and learning more and having more responsibilities. People want to learn, and that's usually where they stay. And then lastly, I teach, I talked to in the book is how to write a proper performance review. If you're dreading writing a performance review, it's probably because you haven't put in the work in the first 4 steps. They're chronological. So if you connect with someone, they like feedback. If you have weekly one-on-ones, guess how easy your yearly performance review is to write. What do we do when we write a yearly performance review? It's what do I remember over the last 4 weeks? Yeah, you had a good year. Well, hold on, you're evaluating 52 weeks. So how do you put all these things together? And that gets employees to stay. And so the whole thing about the millennial book isn't about the millennials are, highly demanding and we've got to adapt to be like them. No, the millennials, the reason I wrote the book, and you can't be 50 and a millennial, but the reason I wrote the book is the millennials, the first generation that's saying, I'll go somewhere else if I don't get this leadership. They have identified the gap and we need to close it. Because my dad went to work, brought his brown bag, and if the boss said do it, he did it. You can fight as much as you want, that ain't happening anymore. So you've got a labor shortage and you've got a workforce that can go online and look at Glassdoor and see where's a good place to work with good leaders and where's a bad place to work. And so we have to close that gap. And the millennials are just the first generation to vote with their feet. They will leave. And so I don't know how I shared a book in 10 minutes, but I really did, and an 8-hour course, but that's it. But I do want to leave you with what I consider the 2 core behaviors for leaders below all these processes. So next slide, Sarah, and last slide. If you do 2 things really well, if you run a business or you want to improve your relationships or you want to grow, number 1, become an expert in inquiry versus advocacy. It applies to career development, leadership, sales, and that is your ability to investigate before speaking. It doesn't mean you don't advocate, you don't express your view, is you inquire first. So you make sure you're helping in the right manner before you advocate. And the second thing is be on the lookout for willingness versus knowledge. These are the 2 things that have never failed me in any of my leadership programs. Always be on the lookout for the learning gaps as you set goals for your team. And take ownership to close those. People ask me, okay, Mark, this is great, but when is it time that someone should go? And I'm saying, once you've given them the skill through one of these 5 processes, they've demonstrated that they can do it. They just choose not to. That's a willingness gap, and that's a tough thing to coach. But if they don't know, and it's a new gap that you can train and close, you gotta have lots of time for those people and keep them. That's how they learn and grow, and those are knowledge gaps. So that is a book, a course, an 8-hour course in about 10 minutes. I hope it added value. And if anyone has any questions they want to put in the chat, I guess, so we can keep clicking along, we can. Or Sarah, on the next slide, I think I have my contact info. Yep, so you can find the book online. I have a website for it. You can just go to Amazon. My corporate page is markpetapaw.com. And you can find me on Instagram babbling about stuff I really believe in.